Diane, again, we are so happy to have you on here, and we're gonna yeah, we got people who would love to ask you some questions. And Shelly, go ahead and load up people. But first, before we even do that, man, you have some awesome ideas in a general sense. Anyway, well, I have a couple questions for you. But first, please introduce yourself to everybody too.
Sure. Well, as you were saying, I am running for U.S. Senate. I am an independent candidate. I am not with either party. I think the parties stink, to put it politely. In New York, there is no such thing as New York is unbelievable. So you cannot run as an independent. You cannot run unaffiliated. They force you to create what they call an independent body. So since I really became active through my association with Lyndon LaRouche for 35 years, I called my independent body LaRouche, or the LaRouche Party. That's the line. And your viewers will be interested to know there are two LaRouche candidates in New York, myself running against Gillibrand and Jose Vega, who is running against the congressman from APAC, Richie Torres, in the Bronx.
Wow. Yeah, we definitely, you're one of the good guys, and we super duper appreciate you. The whole entire chat room. It's something we been saying for months. And like, we really believe that both sides are corrupt. Code Pink says the same thing. Jill Stein says the same thing. Yeah, our two-party systems pretty much failed us. You have some awesome ideas. I spoke to you before too. You have some awesome ideas about rebuilding the like targeting and building an infrastructure for Palestinians, like water plants. So instead of Israel controlling their water, they would have their own like water supply and everything. So would you like to explain that to everybody?
Well, sure.
'Cause I really liked your ideas on that.
We have to, I mean, look, we have to take up the hypocrisy here. We have Biden, whatever that's worth, since everyone can see that he's senile, saying that he supports, or people support, a two-state solution. Then you turn around and don't recognize Palestine, and don't recognize them at the United Nations, and don't support recognition of a Palestinian state. How can you possibly argue that you support a two-state solution? It's like 1984, one is more equal than others. But then what does that mean? And I think if you say, okay, how do we get there? An important component of the Oslo Accords, which was never realized, was massive irrigation, massive infrastructure building, modernizing the whole economy. Rabin was very clear. He said there is a shared mission of this region. And he and Arafat were both fighters, warriors. And I think it's an important example for people to say, oh, you can never get peace and no one can ever live together. Not true. And of course, it was Netanyahu who incited the assassin of Rabin. It's what we have right now. But what we are proposing specifically is something called the Oasis Plan from 1975. LaRouche put it on the table, believe it or not. The Ba'ath Party of Iraq agreed to provide credit for building massive, sorry about this, my dog is moving my camera here, to provide massive credit for what? Desalination plants, modern high-speed rail. If you think about what Palestine should look like, what can we do to make sure that not one single life was given in vain? One thing is to ensure that no Palestinian ever lives in a refugee camp again. There should be beautiful modern cities. So much of the great works of historical architecture have been destroyed. Can we have an aggressive plan to rebuild these things? I was in Paris, France recently, and you should see the care they're taking to rebuild the Notre Dame Cathedral. It's unbelievable. They have experts coming in there who know everything about the specific type of wood and this and that. Well, the same care should be given for the historic mosques, universities, buildings in this region. And I think this is the only way that you ultimately get peace. Some people say, oh, well, you have to have a political solution first. To what end? To what end is the political solution unless people know that they are going to have the conditions of life that allow their children to grow up developing their entire potential, to become creative geniuses, to become classical violinists, rocket scientists? Why not? And I think we have to see that potential and then be satisfied with nothing less. Peace is not the absence of war. Peace is a mission where you're moving mankind forward.
Yeah, perfectly said, especially now. This is an awesome topic to bring up, especially now since all the schools and basically, all the mosques, everything has been ruined in Gaza. So this is a perfect idea, especially during these times. And yeah, they're definitely gonna need to rebuild an infrastructure too. So that is awesome. All right, we're gonna have some guests ask questions and everything like that. And Diane, thank you so much. And listen, I I loved it when you ran against Chuck Schumer. It would have been so different if I really wish you would have won that. That was a couple of years ago. You're running against Kate Gillibrand right now, who I really hope you win. I really hope you win because she is definitely not on the good guy side, and you definitely are. So
let me say,
thank you.
I want to say a couple things about her because people don't know. She looks like this little angelic cherub blonde woman who runs around handing out checks to nice organizations, and you don't hear much from her. She's on the Intelligence Committee. Her father-in-law was vice president briefly of British Aerospace. That is a major weapons producing firm, and there's more to that. But so her family is the military industrial complex. There is not one single war she hasn't voted to support. I know she's gotten at least $600,000 from AIPAC, perhaps more. After October 7th, she took numerous trips to Israel and spent a lot of time on the floor of the Congress talking about the hostages. Never once, not a word about the mass unaliving, if you will, of the Palestinian population there. It is really hideous, and it puts the lie. Anyone who says they care about children or care about this cause or that cause, or she's gained notoriety supposedly for legislation to protect women from sexual assault in the military. Well, how about not assaulting our soldiers by sending them into wars where they're demanded to commit war crimes? My sister is an Iraq War veteran. Her husband also. As people are aware, we have 22 soldiers committing suicide per day in the United States. And that is because we are abusing.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's 22 a day. We've had 4 times more soldiers die of suicide. I think that's the figure. It might be higher. Die of suicide since 9/11 than we've had die in combat. Think about that. And it's because I believe that Americans are good people. Our soldiers are good people. We don't have a draft. So people who go into the military largely are ethnic minorities or poor. My sister joined the Army to pay for medical school. And they don't go over there to commit war crimes. But that's what they're told to do, and they come back and they cannot live with themselves. And we saw perhaps the most clear, self-conscious example of this with Aaron Bushnell.
Yeah, God rest his soul too. All right, thank you so much. And remember, everybody, Kirsten Gillibrand, she's a pretty big name in politics. So if Diane can take her out and replace her, that is a significant victory for us. So we're super duper rooting for you on that one. Shelley, who's the first for the question? Is it Goldie?
Yes, it is Goldie. But just real quick, I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us. Miss Sarah, we're so happy to have you here. And you know, I always say this to these folks, I'm an American citizen now, 36 million Irish Americans. We really need to get them on board. I'm sure you've heard Claire Daly speak. She lost her election due to, you know, a lot of funding being pushed against her, but she's still speaking out, the Irish government speaking out about what's happening. So I so appreciate you, and I think you're absolutely on the right track, and we're here to support you in any way that we can. So I'll get back to work now. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Hello there.
Thank you.
My name is Goldie. And I thought it was my time. Is it my time? I'm sorry. Okay, so it's a pleasure. It's an absolute pleasure to meet you, Diane. First off, thank you, Erik and Shelley, for organizing this beautiful panel. I mean, you're the third person that I've been able to ask questions and get, you know, personal information, like just like personal it's just amazing. And I appreciate the time, and I appreciate you being here. So my question is, I am Native American. I'm Indigenous. I live in California, and I'm pro-Palestinian. So I wanted to ask you a question. So let's say we stop APAC, right? They are no longer able to fund us, or they are registered as a, you know,
Foreign
a foreign. There
Yes.
you go. I'm trying to say it nicely. So we stop the funding, and then we're able to stop the funding, you know, to the 11 million a day, the 260 million a day that goes to this current G side. Where do you see, or where would you apply those funds moving forward? How do you see that, and what's your position on that, if you don't mind me asking?
You mean the APAC funding?
Yeah, or just how we could get the APAC funding. How do we get into a position where it's monitored more highly, right? And they are a third, you know, they aren't allowed to operate in the United States as they do so freely. The babysitting stops, right? Or
Right.
it's more transparent. We're seeing where the funds
Well, you're right. Look,
yeah, you know.
there's incredible hypocrisy, right? We were told, oh, the Russians meddled in the election. Everyone was all worked up over that. And of course, the evidence was that they hadn't. But at any rate, the Russians meddled. That was cause for, who was it? I forget which congressman who said this is worse than 9/11, the alleged Russian interference. So why is it okay for APAC, Rep Israel? Why is it okay for them to put millions and millions of dollars into the elections? But I want to get to something a little bit bigger, because I think right now the only thing we can do is make a revolution. And I don't mean violent. I just mean there is no justice right now. Truth has no standing. How do you know? Well, it's been obvious for about 5 years that Joe Biden is dysfunctional. Remember when he ran in 2020, they had to keep him locked in the basement, that he was told not to give press conferences, not hold debates. So clearly he wasn't functional then. But
Yeah,
they
he's
went
still not
ahead-
functional.
Right. And they stuck him
Mhm.
out there and said, this is a qualified presidential candidate, when everyone could see that he was not. So you've heard the term rules-based order, right? This is what
Yes.
Biden says. We're going to have rules-based order. We're promoting democracy. Well, wait a minute. We arrested a whole bunch of students in Columbia, at Columbia University. The charges have been dropped, as they should never have occurred. I had said at the time that if the police were going to Columbia, they should be arresting Hillary Clinton, who was teaching there, as opposed to the students. But there's no, quote unquote, the election process is completely insane. They established the Federal Election Commission. Some of my colleagues believe they set the FEC up merely because of Lyndon LaRouche's candidacy, because we had a massive street presence. He had publications of over 250,000 subscribers. The FBI came in and shut them all down and declared them involuntarily bankrupt and put him and a dozen of my associates in prison. Him for 5 years, others for many longer. And how did they get away with this? Well, they have their arbitrary rules, which they make up and they decide they're enforcing. In the case of him, it was conspiracy to confuse the Internal Revenue Service. Who determines that that's a crime? And then you have people who are committing massive crimes in public.
It's like they make
in
up the
broad
rules
daylight.
that they can break, though. They're making the rules that they can
Right.
break, and that's kind of what my question was geared to. It seems like APAC can make and break these. They make these rules. They send this money. They negotiate, and it looks like it's just funneling. I don't want to get into conspiracy theories, but it looks like it's funneling income in and out, and so that stops. And you know, we are working in a position where we want to stop sending 11 million a day, right? That's kind of what's happening with Jill Stein. A lot of people are moving in that direction, and let's say that does happen and you are in the Senate. What do you see? How do you feel we can allocate those funds, and what direction would you move it in as far as that goes?
Well, in keeping with this look, the whole entire system is unjust. So we have to have a different metric, which is not money per se. In a way, money is not the issue. It's the question of your idea. I'll give you an example. So we say, I think we need to build about 42,000 miles of new modern high-speed rail. And people say, well, where are you going to get the money? Well, we somehow found $95 billion to send weapons to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. No one said, where are you going to get the money for that? Or when we decided to bail out AIG for $80 billion, which we did twice, no one said, where do you get the money for that? So the question is not the money. The question is the intent. And that's why I'm saying there has to be a revolution in the thinking of people, because what we have to get is for the American people to demand, you've heard the saying, selling your birthright for a bowl of pottage, right? We deserve, our Constitution says the government is supposed to uphold the principle of the general welfare. So what does that mean? It means that we shouldn't even have a government unless they are doing something that improves the living conditions of every single person in this country. Otherwise, we might as well go out in the woods and eat maggots and dig a hole to go to the bathroom in, and that's how you're going to live. So the government is supposed to make it possible for us to live in a relatively civilized fashion where we don't have to worry if our water is safe or if our food is safe or if we're going to have electricity. And then you have free play of your mind to make a discovery, to make a great contribution to mankind. That's the right. That's why we have a government. Right now, I don't think anyone in Washington has that conception. So the problem isn't the money per se. We can print money. The Federal Reserve has been doing it forever, and I think the Federal Reserve should be abolished, by the way, but that's another topic. But it's what do we want to do? And I want to encourage and inspire the people of this nation to, in a sense, lift their sights and say there is no reason why we should be living as we do. There is no reason why we should be allowing our military using our money to run around the planet committing atrocities, and we're not going to stand for it anymore. I know there was a big deal about the NDAA apparently has this, now they're going to automatically list everyone for military service. All men age 18 to 24, 26 or something, not even citizens, everyone. Well, that's alarming, obviously. We don't have enough troops. They're running out of soldiers in Ukraine. They've lost about 500,000 people. On the other hand, a friend of some of my friends that no longer in the Congress, Charlie Rangel, a Korean War veteran, used to really support the draft. Why? Because he said if we had a draft, then it wouldn't just be poor and middle class kids going to fight. Everyone would discover that their children were going to have to serve. And suddenly this would not be a class issue, and the rich people and the influential people and the congressmen would be maybe dragging their feet a little bit about going to war. So we got to change the way that we think. We have to have a much more optimistic view about what mankind is capable of doing, what kind of problems we're capable of solving, and then we have to demand that, and we have to force the government to conform. So being in the streets, doing interventions. Just before I get on, I saw someone who said they saw me after I'd gone into this Biden, the three presidents thing at Radio City Music Hall. And a friend of mine who has a little more resources than I do, I told him, I need you to get me a ticket for this fundraiser. So he shelled out $1,000, which we hate to give to Biden, but he did it so I could get a seat on the floor in the orchestra section right in front of the stage. And I knew security would be tight. I've gone to events like I intervened on Schumer once with a bullhorn, which I fit in my purse, but I knew I couldn't get the bullhorn through security. So I made a banner. A friend and I made it out of thin cloth. It said "War Pigs All," because it was, who was it? Bill Clinton, Biden, Hillary, Obama. I forget who all was there. Awful. Anyway, and then I got this little security whistle, which I put on my key ring because I was trying to figure out how to make enough noise in a hall that holds 10,000 people that I could hold up the banner and blow on this whistle. And I did, and it was great. It worked, and they really were unhappy. And then happily, there were many other interventions. We have to do these things. I had an idea that no one should be allowed anymore to get up and lie in public. So if you're in an audience and someone is lying, you have to stand up. Don't be rude. You don't have to use curse words. You're not going to deck anyone. Just tell the truth. They should be scared of us. We shouldn't be scared of them. They should be scared of us.
That is the damn truth. Thank you so much. And Goldie, thank you for your question. Mohammed Issi, go right ahead, my friend, for your question. Appreciate your patience, buddy. I have to do a microphone request. He has microphone problems once in a while.
All
Go
right.
ahead. There
Sorry
you are, buddy.
about that.
There you are. Go right ahead.
How are you, ma'am? How are you?
Okay, a little tired. I was out in the hot sun today.
All right. I want to give you a tip, actually, because I'm a Muslim, right? And an American, right? And the Americans, the Muslim Americans are feeling guilty inside, right? Because what's happening to Palestine. So what I would suggest to you is that if you can allocate, few people that can go to the mosques every Friday, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And talk to the people and say that, yes, you know what? We know that you're feeling guilty, right? We understand that you cannot do anything about it, but this is the vote that you're going to do, right? Vote for me. I'm telling you, they will follow you everywhere, right? Just every Friday, right? Just keep doing that. The area, and I promise you, people will come after you, or they will vote because they want to do something, but they don't know what to do. You understand? But the only thing that they can do is express their voice and their vote. So a lot of mosques, they're feeling guilty. So every Friday, that's where everybody comes together. Send somebody
Mohammed,
there.
my friend.
You'll be good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mohammed.
Thank you.
And thank you, Mohammed. Yeah, everybody has a sense of guilt I myself have a sense of guilt sometimes for not feeling like I'm not doing enough too. Mohammed Issi, thank you so much, my
you,
friend.
sir.
Let's get to Dr. Handala, 1948. Dr. Handala, you're up next, my friend. Welcome to the show. Go right ahead, buddy. Oh, all right. I've seen his microphone go on and off, so microphone problems on. Go right ahead, doctor.
Okay,
There you are.
can you?
Hello.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Hi, Eric. Hi, doctor. So my question is, I'm a new citizen in the United States, So I was wondering what you could do for the freedom of speech that we saw this in the last 3, 4, 5 months being violated, especially for the college students. And we saw the articles that came in the Washington Post showing that there is an involvement of more than 100 personality, rich people, that they are interfering, corrupting, and with the money, with the power, with whatever promise to limit and inside the New York police to attack the example the college students in Columbia University. So this is kind of one question, and if am I allowed, I have another question. Thank you.
Doctor, yeah, we hit up on for one question at a time. Thank you, Doctor, though. Go ahead, Diane.
On the freedom of speech question, we just have to use it. Again, we vastly outnumber these billionaires, and they think they have power, but clearly they don't. Somehow they decided in New York that they had to drop the charges against the students they arrested at Columbia, and I believe that's happened in other universities. Why did that happen? Because public opinion is turning against the atrocities being committed by the IDF, by the Israelis. I have been doing a lot of organizing actually in the Upper West Side in Manhattan, which you can imagine enormous tension, a very large Jewish population, and only a few blocks from Columbia University. And some of the people we met on the street told us that the synagogues in this area are split about 50-50 for ceasefire. And I get that sense because the people we're meeting are very anguished. But if you're not out there in the street, if we're not there talking to them, they don't have a way to express this. And I wanted to just go back on the mosque question, because actually, as many of you know, especially those of you who are following and supporting Jill Stein, who was not able to get on the ballot in New York, which I think is outrageous. They tripled the signature requirement for independent candidates. So you have to get 45,000 valid signatures in only 6 weeks. And it's really less than that because they have so many bureaucratic hoops and ridiculous crossing T's and dotting I's and details that you need at least a week just to clerk the petitions, to look at them, review them, make them they're correct. I was able to get close to 70,000 signatures and got on the ballot. And we got many of those signatures at the mosques. And we had a number of people from different mosques who were really good, who went and circulated the petitions among their friends. It was a very important part of getting on the ballot. We have to do a lot more. And if there are people watching who have ideas, please, you can, contact my website, sareforsenate.com. Send me a note, send me an email. We need people to go with us to all of these mosques to get out literature, to let people know about the campaign. I can't imagine anyone wanting to vote for Kirsten Gillibrand, but they may not know that they have an option.
Yes, thank you so much. And Doctor, thank you for that question. That was a very, very good question. Everybody, we have Nader Hu from, he's a journalist from El Mayadeen News Network. So let me get right to Nader Hu because he's a special guest. So Nader Hu, buddy, welcome to the show. How are you? And go right ahead, bud.
I'm doing well. Thank you, Eric. I appreciate you. I hope you guys can hear me okay.
Nice and clear.
Okay, great. I have new earbuds in my ear and I can never tell. I can't hear myself. But anyways, hello, Diane. It's really good to be up here with you. Thank you for coming on live with all of us. It's very important, and we appreciate you. I honestly wish you were in Virginia so I could vote for you. But that doesn't mean we can't advocate for you and donate to your campaign and just get the word out. Before I ask my question, I want to ask a permission. while you and Eric are both up here, we would like to host you on our news network. We're a pan-Arab news network. However, many Arab Americans in the United States here watch our network, and we'd like to host you on one of our news programs at some point. So if we could get permission for that, I could contact Eric, later,
Or,
and maybe we could make that happen.
yes, I'd be glad to do it. Yes.
Thank you.
El
Thank
El
you.
Mayadeen, or excuse me, Al Mayadeen News Network is a very, very big news agency in the Middle East. So yeah, that's 100% on my behalf. Of course, I would.
All right. Thank you. My question is in regards to what you mentioned, because I didn't know that about getting on the ballot as far as, for example, like Jill Stein in New York. What? How can we best organize? Before any election, just get the word out. Amongst the people, as far as that there were people like you, people like Jill Stein, and others who are advocating for what's right in regards to foreign policy, which is a big concern to Arab and Muslim Americans and everybody, really. I mean, it's not just, of course, it's everyone. But how can we get the word out before, these deadlines, way before even campaigns start?
Well, I think it really depends on where you are and what your circumstances are. I really appreciate, Eric, you having me on, because I am being massively shadow banned, and it is really wild and frustrating. I've seen videos where the number of views goes down. I've had things on Facebook where I have, I don't know, 50 shares, but it says only 3 people watched it, this kind of thing. And therefore, my approach in New York has been not to rely on it, although I'm happy to say when I go to different rallies and things, a lot of people know me, so I know that I'm being seen. But I try to do as much as possible in the real world. What do I mean? Printed literature. My bullhorn I mentioned earlier, rallies in the street. I'm running all over the state. I've already gone through 5 tires because we have so many potholes in this ridiculous state that I've had to replace a bunch of tires. But we just have to be there. We have to be real. We have to meet people. And I think it's really urgent now for the reasons that I said. And the social media can be very destructive. I mean, talk about binary, right? It's computer. You're either for this or you're for that. And then because there's a lot of advertising money, and I'm sure there's people listening who know this better than I do, how it all works, you only get fed the things that you agree with already. So instead of people becoming more open-minded, they become more closed-minded. And you see people run into each other. How can she think that? Well, it's possible that she has never heard anything that was outside of what she already agreed with. And that is really dangerous. And it's why people get divided into camps and go against their own conscience about what is right, what is good for humanity. So again, it's that voice, being public, being visible. I have some friends on Long Island, to give you an example, a guy who owns a boat. And when we were out organizing, we ran into another guy who makes signs. So they're going to make a 24-foot banner that they're going to put on the boat, and they're going to sail it all around in the Hudson River or wherever to get my name out and make it visible. So all kinds of things like that. Be creative.
Amazing. The reason I asked that question, really, and when you look at the polls today that they bring on CNN, MSNBC, and the major, American networks, as far as what's important for Americans, we don't see what's happening in Palestine on the list. We see the economy, we see the environment, we see the border, but we don't see that on the top 5. And I personally believe that it's actually there. I believe that it should be there because when you look at the Never Biden movement, it's a pretty large movement in this country.
Right.
So that means that there are a lot of people that really care about this issue.
Right.
And so, I think that, that's something that we really need to capitalize on, and we need those voices heard. I mean, generally
Well,
speaking,
also, the polls, look, the polls are just completely fake. And I think they
mhm,
do it so they can rig the
Oh, I
election,
believe
to
that
tell you
too.
the truth. And I'll give you an example. When I ran against Schumer, I was the first, because the tripling of the signature requirement for independence, the first year that was in effect was 2022. So I was the first person and the only person to make it onto the ballot as a statewide independent. And the argument they gave for tripling the signatures was that to prove you were not a frivolous candidate. So I had jumped over that hurdle and should have been included in the debate. But
sure.
they said, no, no, you can't be in the debate unless you have 15% of the vote. And it wasn't like there were a million candidates. It was Schumer, the Republican who agreed with him, and me. So my campaign manager called the television station and said, where do you get the standard? And they said, well, we have these polls and she has to get at least 15%. Now, first of all, that's absurd because you don't know who you like until you see the debate. But second of all, she got the questions from the 4 polling agencies that they used. And I knew this was coming up because since I had so many volunteers, I was getting calls. People said, I just got this phone call and they were asking me who I was voting for US Senate. When I said Diane Sare, they told me that wasn't a choice. And sure enough, the four
Wow.
polling agencies that they used to determine if I had 15% support did not mention my name. I was not a choice in those 4
Wow.
polls.
That's
That
incredible.
is insane.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
So,
that's what they're doing with Palestine. It's on everybody's mind. I can tell you this button, my ceasefire button, which I was wearing in the Upper West Side, and I was a little nervous. I didn't know how it would go. And I met one, IDF type who was sort of violent seeming, and we changed our corner so he didn't come back with a mob to attack us. But I met so many people who said, I am so glad you're for cease. They just didn't know what to do, and they're scared. And people come up to me and say, you're so courageous. And I did have a volunteer who actually was assaulted by someone with the IDF who just laid him out on the sidewalk in a quick, it was pretty nasty. So there is reason to be fearful, but we shouldn't be.
yeah, absolutely. And again, I mean, uh, it's very normal for politicians to go after the African American vote. We hear about the Latino vote, the women's vote, but we don't hear about the Arab American vote in this country. Even though it exists, and and I believe this year that they're going to be definitely a large part will not be voting for either of the two parties, the Democrats or the Republicans. But I think that we need to find a way that those voices can be recorded as such. The reasons why they're not voting, so that in upcoming future elections, that it's known and that they are sought after, and that these communities are included in the discussions. So I just want to encourage everybody that can vote for you, Diane, to vote for you. And I want to encourage everybody that just remember, just because you're not in New York doesn't mean you shouldn't be calling your friends and family in New York. Doesn't mean you can't donate to her campaign and support and advocate. Thank you, Diane, for the time. Thank you, Erik, for bringing me up. And
Always.
Diane, we'll be in touch. It'll probably be my headquarters from Lebanon. That's where our headquarters. I work in the Washington D.C. office.
Okay, good.
And
Yeah,
go
good.
ahead. Go
No,
ahead.
that's fine. Great.
Okay. All right. Thank you, guys. Take care.
Thank you, Nader of Al Mayadeen. Appreciate you very, very much for swinging by, Nader. Thank you so much. And Diane, listen, what you said about polls, I always say the same thing. Even Rush Limbaugh said that polling is more to mold public opinion rather than reflect it. And I read Kellyanne Conway's book, where she's like a famous pollster, everybody. She's the one who helped put Donald Trump into office. She herself even said that, like, in the Republican Party, or you can take it from both sides, but she even said, like, there's politicians who call up to pollsters to lean on them to fudge the numbers in the direction that benefits them. So always take polling data with a grain of salt, because it's more of a political tool than something that is a political reflection. 100% agree with you on that, Diane. Now let me see, who was next? Shelley, was it Kay at the bottom, I think is next? Is that the next person? All right, Kay, thank you so much for your patience, Kay, and go right ahead.
Hello, Diane. My name is Jamie. My question is, you know how they are allowed to put bills together, and then people have to like make deals so the bills go. Any idea? Yes. That's the question. Can you get rid of that? Is there? How do you?
I'm sorry for laughing. That's a great idea. It's so stinking corrupt. And congressmen have blocks, like if someone is from Dearborn, Michigan, and so they really had better vote for a ceasefire or they're going to lose their seat, but they don't want to lose their funding from whoever. Then they get a bunch of they say, look, do we have it? Do we have what we need to send the weapons to Israel? Because I'm going to have to vote for a ceasefire. Because otherwise I'm going to be out of office. But if we have enough votes, otherwise, it's disgusting. And that's why I'm saying, in a sense, it's a revolution from the top to the bottom.
That's a big problem.
It is. And I'm saying also, we have to not be corrupt ourselves. We have to be truthful. We have to not be fearful about what someone's going to say. I find it all the time as a candidate. People have this laundry list. Where do you stand on this? Where do you stand on that? And I'm saying, do you want to talk to me like a person? Maybe you'd like to get to know me and you'd have an idea what I might do in a crisis, as opposed to giving me a multiple choice exam about what I want. And it leads people to be very disappointed, and it's easy to lie. It's easy to lie. Because you get the profile of the group and you say X. And I've discovered that often people are better than you think, and you should just tell the truth. In one case years ago, goodness, must have been 12 or 15 years ago, I ran for office in New Jersey. I ran for Congress there, and I was at a Tea Party event or something, and someone asked me about immigration. And I said, I don't even remember what I said. It was some kind of mealy-mouthed answer, probably not as forceful as what I might normally think. And I just said, well, we're a nation of immigrants and something or other. And the guy said, well, if we don't let these people into this country, there's going to be no one to do any work. We have so many people in the United States from other countries that we have to figure out how they can become citizens. And I was really surprised. And had I just said, oh, we should throw everybody out or whatever, he never would have told me that. We never would have gotten the answer. And I think we have to, in a sense, that's part of this getting rid of the fear, is have the courage to be really truthful with each other, so we liberate ourselves to break out of the narratives and the, pea pod that we're supposed to fit into with all of the quote unquote acceptable opinions.
Thank you.
Good question, Kay. Appreciate you very, very much. And Shelley, correct me if I'm wrong. I think breaking news is breaking news. You're next for your question, correct?
That's correct, Erik. Thank you.
Go right ahead, breaking news.
Yeah, Mr. Erik, thank you so much. My name is Adam, and I'm streaming from Nigeria. So I just, when you received the guest, that is Diane Sare, and who is also a candidate that is contesting for a Senate seat in the Assembly. Well, one person asked a question earlier, concerning the students that were being arrested during the campaign in the university in regards to the issue that is ongoing on the Middle East. Like we that are watching what is happening in the Middle East and then the reaction of some of the government from the western part of the world. So people are now began to thinking in such a way that people that are propagating democracy and then what they practice is entirely different from what they say, especially like the cases of the Middle East. You know, like what happened is when the Israeli regime has claimed that their objective is to eliminate Hamas. And that is the objective, to eliminate Hamas all over from that Gaza Strip. But what happened was that in the process of trying to eliminate Hamas, then there were many
I'm sorry,
casualties.
sorry to interrupt you. I'm so sorry. We can't say that word because we will
We
get.
have buzzwords.
Yeah, we have buzzwords, so we can't say that word. So I think if you can.
Just say the age group. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's why I asked what the question you had, so we could make sure we knew where we were going. Thanks.
Yeah, breaking news. You can go ahead and ask your question. Just instead of saying that H word of that group of people, because remember that's one of the buzzwords that the platform looks out for. So just say the H group. But go ahead, breaking news.
What will be the courage you're going to give like the people that are witnessing what is happening from the other part of the world, especially like we from the Africa that also are not feeling comfortable with what is happening there? Like what confidence should we have that yes, there will be some candidates that can stand for the global community and do the right thing? Thank you so much.
Well, if you Google Jose Vega, you will see him getting dragged out of a meeting at the Asia Society where he confronted Matt Pottinger, who was a notorious anti-China hawk who wants a war with Taiwan, wants a war with China over Taiwan. And Jose is running for Congress, so you can know that he will tell the truth. He will fight. But look, the voice of you in Nigeria, in Yemen, all over the world is actually very important. Don't forget, Julian Assange just got out of prison. There was no intention of doing that, but it became so obvious that the United States is running around the planet claiming that we are the Democrats. And this is the line at the Asia Society, like what they said about the Vietnamese. Well, you know, they don't really care about human life. So it's okay if we kill 3 million of them. We're the ones, or unalive 3 million. We are the ones who really care about human life. So it's okay, you know, that kind of thing. We're the ones who have this high standard of human rights and freedom of speech. The whole world is looking at us and saying, well, if that's true, why are you going to give this journalist a 175-year jail sentence? How could you have, what's his face, Pompeo, talking about assassinating this person? You know, what is this? And in fact, I listened to part of the 4-hour live stream when Assange was making his guilty plea, which was absurd, but I think it's fine for him to have done that. He was going to die in there. I hear some people say, oh, well, he should have never taken a plea. You are not in his shoes. And he has suffered enormously for what he did. And apparently, according to his wife, he has not agreed to a gag order or anything like that, but he has to recover. At any rate, one of the commentators said that the Assange case was creating a big problem for US-Australia relations. We want Australia to work with us against China, but Australia is saying, you know, we're not really comfortable working with you because you have one of our citizens who's been in prison all these years and you're threatening to jail him for 175 years. And so Assange is now free. And that's why I'm saying this question of a revolution is not pie in the sky. It's not a mystery. There is a massive kind of pressure building of public opinion, not only in the US, but in the world. Look at the votes at the United Nations for ceasefire, for recognizing Palestine, for other matters. Don't think that this isn't felt. Also, someone mentioned the uncommitted vote in Michigan. Remember, Biden had to pretend he was organizing a ceasefire, even though he wasn't at the time, because he was so freaked out about 100,000 votes uncommitted in the Democratic primary there. So there is a lot of power to bring pressure to bear on this.
Thank you so much, Mama, and I wish you all the best with the interaction you have with the public, because it is a very difficult kind of task to face people on live session. Unprepared questions is not that easy. Mr. Erik, you are doing a very good job. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Breaking news. I thank you very much for swinging on by, and that was a great, great question. Now I think Jennifer, you are next up at bat. Welcome, Jennifer. Go right ahead.
Hi, thank you for having me up, Erik and Shelley and Diane. Thank you so much for coming and just, sharing with us and being here. And I'm sorry about your experiences on social media. I'm so glad that you mentioned doing the footwork. I'm also really grateful that you mentioned that how social media works, it tends to group us together. So there are still people that will pop in that have no idea, that really don't understand the complexity. And we need to be a little more patient with those that do happen to stumble upon a pro-Palestinian live with some of their questions. It's because they truly might not know yet. And your other response was taking, boots to the ground and getting out there with your flag and your pen. And if you got to go across the corner, go across the corner, but, do the work, write letters, do the work. So I heard all of that stuff and I appreciate it. I didn't mean to just reiterate it back, but I am. And as far as having issues with getting your message out here on TikTok, if you have the opportunity to chat with Erik, he has a great deal of experience on how to work around that and could give you some wonderful tips that might help boost your content. I'm going to follow you after I'm done speaking with you, and I'll do my part in reposting anything I see of yours and liking, sharing, doing all of that stuff. But I know he's got some great tips. On to my question. So I would like to know, when you do gain this seat and you are elected a representative in the Senate, what do your first 60 days look like? Maybe 90 days if you can go that far, but tell me what it looks like for you when you first start.
Before they lock me up and throw me out of the Senate.
Yeah, you got to get into action real quick.
Really, we got to stop funding these wars everywhere. We should have a halt on shipping weapons, period. I would like to also address the root cause of this, which is the bankruptcy of the transatlantic system. And I mean this very seriously. I think we have to put the system through bankruptcy reorganization. The Federal Reserve, it's not just an audit. It should be put out of business. I support having a national bank, as what Hamilton ran. I support reinstating the Glass-Steagall Act, the separation of the banks between commercial, normal savings and loan banks and investment firms. The repeal of Glass-Steagall allowed them to stick all these bankrupt entities into banks, and then the Americans bail them out. And I will tell you, the bankruptcy of the system has an enormous amount to do with these wars. I mean, if you take Ukraine, for example, right now, BlackRock owns a third of the country. And the money we are sending into that war is just funding BlackRock, in effect, while killing hundreds of thousands of people. If you do a bankruptcy reorganization, or the kind of thing that FDR did during the bank holiday You're going to have to go through the books of all the banks. You're going to find the drug money laundering, the weapons trafficking, the human trafficking, all of this garbage, and clean it up. And of course, people aren't supposed to talk about that, but Americans want it desperately. And we are being looted over and over and over again. We were looted in the first bailout. Then they did another bailout. Then what did they do? Well, they said, we just have to keep printing money. So they print money. So how do we get looted? Hyperinflation. What people are paying for groceries right now versus what you were paying 4 years ago. What are you paying for rent? What are you paying for your mortgage? And then they say, oh, we've been printing too much money. The only way to stop inflation is to raise the interest rates. Great. No one can afford to buy a house. No one can pay their credit card debt. So guess what? You got looted again. So, and think about in New York City, you know, I was astounded a couple of years ago when I was feeding the parking meter because I thought that was so much cheaper than going to a garage. I paid $36 to park at a meter for the day. So you're being looted again. The money has no value because we don't produce and because we're just bailing out all these Ponzi schemes, and someone has to deflate this bubble. And we're either going to do it in an orderly way where we put human life and human welfare first, or it's going to happen in a big chaotic explosion or implosion, and they're trying to stave that off. So part of this massive bloated budget for our military and these wars has a lot to do with trying to bail out this bankrupt system.
Yeah, it really is one big Ponzi scheme. Actually, that's a perfect analogy. Yes, it really is. So Jennifer, thank you super duper much. Oh, and Mark is actually with us. Mark, I just seen you as I looked up. Mark from works with Jill Stein, actually. Mark, man, welcome to the show. Hello, how are you, my friend?
Hey, Eric, I'm doing good. Thank you so much for bringing actually the right ladies in the panel here to have people actually ask her directly. And Diane, actually, thank you so much for being here. And we really appreciate you. And I know you had to go through the petition, signing about 70,000 petition just to get into the ballot. And I'm sure you know, a couple of years ago, in 2021, it was only 15,000.
Correct.
And just like we had to go through that. And unfortunately, we reached almost to 45,000, but we reached actually 42,000 signatures. But of course, there is legislation right now and some lawsuit behind the scene working on it to see if hopefully we can, Dr. Gelestein can be on the ballot. I am 100% supporter for all women who's running for any office. Honestly, you guys will bring peace to this world. So speaking of peace, I'm originally from Gaza. And I would like to ask you, would you have called for ceasefire if you were in the office instead of?
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
That is actually the answer I was hoping, and I assumed that you would say yes for it because that is the right thing to do. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and I know I'm not currently in New York, but I will make sure to mention your name for anybody who's looking to vote in New York for you. Hopefully this coming election. Thank you again for running, and hopefully we have more women running our Senate and House. Plus, Dr. Gelestein would be amazing to be the president in 2024. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, Mark, thank you so much for swinging by, and thank you, Mark, for all that you do for all the independent candidates out there. Thank you for all you do in politics. Thank you for your help with the Jill Stein campaign, and we definitely appreciate you, Mark. You're always welcome up on the show, my friend. Thank you for swinging by, buddy. Now let me see. I think all right, Abaz. Dionysus. Dionysus. What's up, buddy? I believe
Diane,
you
how you
were
doing?
next, my friend, so go right ahead.
So I'd like to speak about the BLM and public land and how the corporation is slowly taking away access to public land to the citizens, and if there's going to be any legislative passed on giving access back to the public for public lands, because I remember it's like decades ago we used to be able to have like our own public gardens on public lands and maintain them, and now I see in multiple states, including your own, police officers, policy officers going and destroying these public gardens that serve the underprivileged and marginalized communities. Would you be interested in expanding the BLM to start helping impoverished communities and maybe accessing the land for people instead of the corporations that they give it out to now?
Sure. I mean, this is another part of the Ponzi scheme. In the state of New York and across the country, one of the ways they're destroying agriculture is by bringing in these giant solar panel monstrosities and windmills, which are very unreliable in terms of power production. The components that they're made of are absolutely not biodegradable, but they have companies. And by the way, with the wind turbines, if they want them to be reliable, they have to build a gas-fired power plant anyway to make up for the amount of energy they're supposed to produce, but they don't produce when there's no wind. So what is this? This is another one of these crazy chimeras where they're spending tons of money and they're telling farmers that unless you agree to let us put the windmills on your farm, you can't get a loan. And in the state of New York a few years ago, they actually ruled that the state can override county zoning laws. So people don't even have a choice over the land that's in their district. They're going to be ordered to put these things there, no matter what it is. And I know various towns upstate which have been really devastated. And when you look at the fine print in the contracts where they twist your arm and make you put these things on your land, you become responsible if anything happens to this windmill. You have to pay for it. You have to do the cleanup. It is such a ripoff. So yes, that's sort of a long answer, but there's been a real assault. And again, you find these companies like BlackRock, Ørsted, I think there's a huge Danish company that's pushing all the windmills over here. Denmark, Spain, they're foreign owned, and they are destroying our sovereignty.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I'd like to see it kind of go back to the indigenous tribes and maybe open up some, try to redeem ourselves for the treaties we haven't honored since the beginning. But thank you for that answer.
For clarification for everybody, the BLM department that he's the Department of Agriculture that he's talking about, because there's also another political move. Yeah, all good. Appreciate you very, very much, Dionysus, buddy. Thank you for swinging by. I think OG is next, right? OG, you're up at bat, my friend.
Hello, Eric. Hello, Shelley.
What up?
Diane, thank you for giving us the opportunity to ask you questions. You mentioned about Lyndon LaRouche, and I remember when I was in college, I used to love his movement and all the issues that he championed. Unfortunately for him, even though his campaign was very inclusive, the mainstream media were able to label him as fascist and anti-Sism. And how are you planning to be able to escape the labeling and be able to utilize the social media that unfortunately Lyndon LaRouche didn't have the opportunity to use to be able to escape that labeling?
Right. Well, I think one thing I'm going to do is talk to Erik about getting around some of the shadow banning. But look, as someone, Jimmy Dore, I think, who was working with Jose Vega, said, well, now is a heck of a time to be called anti-Semitic. Anyone who stands against mass murder is now suddenly anti-Semitic. But one of the things, I think I have it behind me here. I guess I'm backwards, so I don't know if you can see this. Can you tell what this says? It says the ugly truth.
Yeah, it is backwards.
Yeah, the ugly truth about the ADL.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh,
Now this is a book.
We hate the ADL.
This book was published by Friends of LaRouche in 1992 when he was in prison. And we decided to take the gloves off on this organized crime, drug running, Satanism promoting organization. And we put this little book out, which got some people very upset. In fact, various people who were involved in putting LaRouche in jail were very active with the Anti-Defamation League. And I think sometimes, rather than get defensive, which people tend to do when they call you names and then you try to pretend that you're really a nice person, we should not do that. We should actually go on the offensive. And I don't know if it was related or not, but I always felt like the fact that we put out this book on the Anti-Defamation League was partly what helped us to get LaRouche out of prison. Because he got out in 1994. He was supposed to have served 10 more years. Henry Kissinger had written to the president's Foreign Intelligence Advisory Board saying, please don't let him out on parole. Please don't let him out early. We want to keep him in there. And we began naming the names and going after some really, really filthy operations. Yeah, here's the whole chapter, colluding with terrorists. We go through everything, what they did, how they worked with the Ku Klux Klan, the Anti-Defamation League, that is. And that's so important right now. In fact, we used to have a bumper sticker, which I'd like to use, because people say, well, why do you say you're with LaRouche? Why do you use the LaRouche Party? Isn't that a lot of baggage? You don't want to have that name. And I said, no, he was a patriot. He was a genius. He was one of the, you'd have to read his writings, absolutely brilliant economist. And they wanted to silence him. And I use his name because in the state of New York, for example, we had over 80,000 subscribers to LaRouche's publications, and people know him. And they know it wasn't true, but they get scared. And so we had a bumper sticker that said, don't say nasty things about LaRouche if you've got something to hide. And I will tell you, in the peace movement, you get, LaRouche, get these reactions. And there's almost always something nasty about the person. Are they with the FBI? Do they just believe the lies from before? Most people by now are beginning to realize that anyone trying to do something right is going to be called names.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was a great question, OG. And Dan, I am so happy to hear that you're anti-ADL. We make sure I cover them at least a few times a week, just so people are aware. Like they're equally as bad. I mean, how bad AIPAC is, ADL, everybody, is just as powerful and just as bad as AIPAC. They are a very, very evil company. You can check out their website, adl.org, to see what they brag about. They're the ones who make the like all the shadow bans and all the community service guidelines and everything on social media. That's their influence. They're
Now,
the ones who influence. Go ahead.
Did you hear the news, though? The Wikipedia just voted that the ADL is not a reliable source on Israel.
Did they?
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, ADL is horrendous. They're also the ones who are whipping our college campuses to the political agendas that they have. That's the ADL too, everybody. Like they will sue the hell out of anything that is against the interests of Israel and stuff. So yes, the ADL, and I'm glad you're really vocal in, first of all, making people aware of what the ADL is and how bad it is. So Diane, thank you so much for joining us today. I super duper appreciate you. That was an awesome interview, and thank you so much for just taking all the questions from all the guests, and would love to have you on our show again at any future day. And we're rooting for you. We are so deeply rooting for you. Diane, thank you again for swinging by, and anything else you wanted to say? And I definitely appreciate you.
No, just please visit my website, sareforsenate.com, and thank you all the people who said that they've donated or helped. And you're welcome to come into New York and help get out literature and hold up banners and all that stuff as we get closer to the elections. And thanks, Erik, for having me, and we'll be talking for sure.
Yes, all right, everybody, I'm going to post her website in our Discord. Actually, Shelly, do you mind posting the website in the Disco when you get a chance? And again, Diane, thank you so much for swinging by. We definitely appreciate you. We agree with everything that you say. It's refreshing. It is refreshing to hear your opinions and your voice, because it more reflects public opinion. And as opposed to everything that the Democrats and Republicans are saying is just the same old stuff from decades and decades, and they're out of touch with what the public wants, and you are in touch. So super duper appreciate you, Sarah. Thank you again.
Thanks. Thank you. Bye-bye.